Okay, so here's the experiment that we're going to be doing today. We are going to be testing how much water each substrate that we have can absorb. We know that the Q plugs, these grow plugs that you have in your home hydroponics kit that are in this Ziploc baggie, there's 10 of them. We know that this is kind of a suggested option. However, the seeds that you've got in your hydroponics kit, you've got more than 10 seeds. So if you can find another substrate, another growing media that will allow your plants to germinate, you're going to want to use that so you can grow as many plants as you possibly can. So that's what we're trying to figure out today. So the materials that you're going to need are a paper towel. I've got my own. These are just like brawny Selecta size paper towels, so I can have it as a square. But there's also a paper towel in your hydroponics kit with the seed, so you could use that paper towel as well. You need some sort of measuring implement. If you have your kit, then you have a measuring transfer pipette, this is called, and you can't quite see it, but on the transfer pipette at the very top, there's a line with a number 1. So that means this is 1 milliliter of liquid. And that's going to be important as we go through this. If you don't have your kit and you don't have your transfer pipette, you could use a measurer. This is a teaspoon measurer, so you can see how many teaspoons of water your different substrates will hold. Or you can take a measuring cup like this and you can fill it with a certain amount of water. Maybe you fill it with a cup of water, and then you will pour a little bits of it out onto your substrate and you can subtract. So if I have a cup of water and one of my Q plug is able to hold a quarter of it, goes down to the next line, then I'll know how many cups or ounces of water my different substrates were able to hold. So get creative with the different materials that you might use for this. You also will need 3 experimental substrates. It's totally up to you, whatever is in your house that you can use for this, that your parent won't be upset if you mess it up. I am using a little piece of sponge, and you can see that I have cut the sponge to be about the same size as the Q plug because I'm trying to control my experiment. I'm trying to keep as much of it the same as I can. I'm also using a paper towel, which I folded again into a square about the same size as the Q plug. And I'm going to use a cotton pad, which I'm going to just kind of leave as it is because it's about the same size as the circle that I have drawn on a piece of brown paper. So you could use, I've used a piece of a cardboard box. The reason that we want to use something brown is because it'll be easier to see when this gets wet. Okay, we're going to be adding water to our different substrates until the water goes through onto the paper. Okay, so you can use, this is a piece of cardboard from a box. You could also use like a grocery bag, right? The back of a grocery bag. If you don't have anything brown, you could just use a piece of paper, or a piece of construction paper would work as well if that's what you have at home. You're going to need a pen or something to write with because, as you can see, I've drawn circles and labeled them with the names of the different substrates. And then you're going to need a cup of water. So I've just got a mason jar right here with fresh water that I'm going to be pulling from with my pipette. All right. Does everybody got that? Give me a thumbs up if you have that with you and you're going to be doing the experiment along with me at home. Give me a thumbs up. Yeah, Alexia, woo. Anybody else? I'd like you to be doing it along with me. So you should have kind of collected your experimental materials. If not, you're going to go ahead and go do it after class by yourself. Okay. I'm going to close my chat, but I would love to. I'll keep chat. Why not? Okay. So step 1, you're going to take your brown paper and you're going to draw 4 circles on it that are the circles should be about the same size or a little bit bigger than your substrates. And you're gonna label each one with the name of the thing you're putting there. So I've got my Q plugs, I've got a sponge, I've got a paper towel, and I've got my cotton pad, okay? So I'm gonna take 30 seconds to do that right here. And I'm gonna set up my camera so that you can see what I'm doing. Everybody should be able to see this. I'm gonna flip it around so that you can see the names of the different things. And in the circles, I'm gonna just place my different materials that I'm gonna be testing. So that's what you should be doing right now. Kind of hard to make a paper towel stay square and flat like that, but just try your best. And then we've got my cotton pad. So this is what you should your setup should look like right now. Go ahead and again, I'm gonna try and get this. Nope, actually, let's take it back like this. I want you to be able to see it, but I don't want to like close my computer. Okay, everybody got that set up? Alrighty. Okay, we're gonna move on to step 2. All right. Now we're gonna change up the protocol a little bit. So we did step 2, place our different materials inside of the circles with the correct labels. Got it. Okay. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to get some water inside of our pipette. This suggests that you count how many individual drops of water end up in your substrate. The issue with that is that you're going to be counting to like 300, which is too much. Too many drops, too many drops to count. It says to use tally marks. So what I'm going to suggest is that rather than doing what it says here, you're going to measure the amount of liquid either by filling the pipette up just to the line. So on your pipette, there's a line right below the bulb. If you just fill it up this much, in the bottom part and not letting the water go up into the bulb, then we can say this is 1 milliliter of water. So we can measure the number of milliliters of water that we add this way. You could also, again, use something like a teaspoon or a half a teaspoon might be better. Fill it. What, Jabari?
Oh, no, not you, my sister.
So you can get a specific amount of water in your measuring thing, and you can measure how many teaspoons of water that you put onto your different materials. Okay, that's how we're going to do it instead. And what we're going to do is we're going to put water on our material until we see water coming through it onto the brown paper that we've got. Okay, so let's start with the Q plug. This is the thing we're going to test first. And again, if you don't have your materials and you're just going to follow along with me, then that's fine. But also, how long has it been since you did an experiment, right? This should be kind of fun and exciting. So we're going to get a pipette of water, and I'm going to show you that my water is only going up to the bottom. You see, it's only coming up to this part here. I didn't fill up the whole bulby. I just sucked it up just till about that much. You might have a medicine dropper at home. You can totally use that. Those are usually about a milliliter themselves as well. So I'm going to take that bulby, or just that amount of water, and I'm going to carefully spray it on my Q plug, and I'm going to count 1, 2, 3. And you should start to hear it like kind of crackling a little bit. 4. 5. 6. And now what we want to do as we're getting more bits of water in here is we're going to pick it up and we're going to check. My spot is still dry, so it can still absorb more, though I am feeling that it's a little bit wet on the outside, so we're getting close. So that was 6, I think, right? 7. You can slow down as it's getting closer to being saturated. That means full of water. 8. Let's check around. Do we see any water coming out yet? Not quite. Not quite yet. That's 8. 9. Do we see any water coming out yet? There we go. Okay, so underneath, when we pick up our cube, we see there is a dark spot now because there's water on the thing. So we were able to get 9 milliliters of water. Is that a 9? Yes. I'm writing upside down. 9 milliliters of water we could get into our cube plug. Okay. Was anyone able to get more than that? Now, if I was doing teaspoons, you would just write how many teaspoons of water, but make sure that you include your unit here so that we're comparing all the same things. Okay. And then you're just going to move on and you're going to do your other ones. I'm going to do them all for you right now so that we've got it on film and so that you can follow along. So what do we think? How many milliliters of water do you think I'm going to get into this piece of sponge? Any hypotheses, any predictions? Do you think it's going to be more or less milliliters than the cube plug? Who has a prediction?
The sponge?
You think the sponge will be able to hold more water or less?
More water.
More water? Okay, let's see. All right, now this is a piece of dry sponge, so it might take a second for it to kind of expand and start to be able to absorb water. So there's 1 mil. 2. 3. 4. Now, something I'm noticing right now as I do this experiment, one of the questions that we came up with yesterday about the Q plugs was, do we think it will expand when it's wet? And it did not. It stayed the same. But the sponge does expand a little bit when it gets wet. So I think, what were we up to 4? Not seeing any water yet. 5. Where did I get off count? I think where did I get off count? 6. Let's check again. Now I do have a sponge with a scrubby on the bottom, so this might take a little while. Oh, it is feeling wet. So that's 6. So I'm going to put this 7th one in slowly to see if it's, I don't know, going to be more than 7 or not. Okay, let's let that absorb for a second. Do I see any water underneath here? There it is. Okay, so I've got a dark spot on my brown paper and there's some drips coming out of my sponge. So I was able to get 7 milliliters of water. Seven milliliters of water into my sponge. So it was close, Alexia. And maybe if I had cut my Q plug to be the same thickness as this sponge, they would have held the same amount of water, right? So maybe a sponge is a good alternative to this Q plug if you don't have one around. Let's try the paper towel. I don't know. I'm not very confident with the paper towel being able to absorb as much water as these sponges. So we've got 1, 2. Now these are nice brawny paper towels, which are a lot more absorbent than something like an eco-friendly paper towel. So just keep that in mind. 3. Let's check. Is it wet under here? Not quite yet. 4. It's still absorbing it, which is good. It's not coming through yet. 4. Oh, it's almost wet, so I'll be slow with this one. Get all the corners of it wet to get it absorbing as much as it can. What is that? 5. Let's see. Okay, it's looking a little wet under there, so I'm gonna call that 5. You can see that there's a wet spot here on my thing. So we're gonna say 5 milliliters of water in our paper towels. Wow, I'm pretty proud of my ability to write that 5 upside down. Did I? Yeah. Okay, I think that we may have accidentally put these in order from most absorbent to least absorbent. So let's see. I am actually gonna go ahead and fold this in half so that it's about the same size as the other items. And let's go. Let's see how many mils of water this is going to hold. Cotton is very absorbent. It might expand a little bit. If you have a cotton ball, you might be able to hold a lot. So that's 1, 2, 3. Okay, that's feeling pretty wet already. Let's see, not quite anything on the paper yet. Let's try number 4. Let's give it another second to absorb and check. Okay, it's looking pretty wet under there. Once it settles in, okay, we've got some wet spots on our brown paper, which means that this one can only absorb 4 milliliters of liquid. Okay. So at this point, you should have taken your own data. I want you to do exactly what I did on your piece of paper. I want you to write down, not exactly, because obviously you're going to have different materials, but I want you to write on your thing how much water, if it's milliliters, if it's teaspoons, if you're counting number of drops, that's cool too. Just make sure that you write it down on your piece of paper. On this next slide, this is your data table. So write the names of the different items that you put in there. So we have our Q plug, we have our sponge, paper towel, and we have our cotton pad. And then we're going to write, rather than the number of droplets, we're going to write the amount of water. So we're going to write 9 milliliters, 7 milliliters. Make sure you put your units, 5 milliliters and 4 milliliters. Okay. And then what I'm going to ask you to do is to take a picture of your board the way it is right now. So just take a picture with your different materials on it and your numbers, and make a new slide after this slide and post that picture. I'll take a picture of mine the way it's sitting right now, so that if you're following along with me and taking my data because you don't have your kit, you can use my picture in your okay. So I took a picture of it, and you're going to go ahead and you're going to put it on that next slide, or you're going to make a new slide where you're going to put a picture of your experiment. Okay. Anybody have any thoughts or questions? Did anyone use a material at home that is more absorbent than the Q plug, or is more absorbent than the materials that I used? Anybody? Did anybody use other materials that absorbed lots of water? Now, just because these materials absorbed less water than your Q plug doesn't mean that they would be a bad material to use to sprout your seeds. You could use like a lot more paper towel and just kind of sit a seed inside of it and let it kind of sprout out of here. That's totally fine. You might have to add water more often. This is able to hold 9 milliliters of water, so you don't have to water your plants as often because it's holding all that water in there. And look, I can squeeze it and some of that water is going to start to drip out, right? And it'll suck it right back up once it gets dried up again. Okay. I'm going to stop recording.